I'd just like to see someone make a fake LinkedIn profile and it just says on there, defeated the it's just all 1CCs.
Ah, there you go.
There we go. Let's do it. Let's create a fake Shoot the Corecast LinkedIn. Just 1CCs on there. We can put in there likes Tex Mexium.
Yes.
Oh
Yes.
boy.
Likes. Long walks on the beach. Tex Mexium.
Yes. And 1CCs.
Yes.
You can tell that we're all tired here.
Shoot the Core Cast.
Welcome to Shoot the Corecast, the official companion podcast to the RF Generation Shmup Club. This is a family-friendly shmup-themed podcast that won't do anything for a Klondike bar, but might do terrible things for Tex Mexium. I'm Addicted, also known as Addicted to Shmups, and with me, as always, I have
MetalFRO, also known as Game Boy Guru. And if you would like to connect with the podcast, you can do so in several ways. Follow us on Twitter/X at ShootCoreCast, or you can follow me directly at Game Boy Guru. You can find the links to our feeds and all of our related pages on our Linktree site. That is linktr.ee/ShootTheCorecast. You'll find a link there also to our Discord, where you can join us for a Shmup Club playthrough, discuss the games, get info on the podcast and episodes, and find out what we're playing next. And then you can also check us out on, or check me out, I should say, on Twitch, because I do stream the Shmup Club Game of the Month multiple times throughout each month. That is twitch.tv/GuruGameBoy.
So, and don't also forget to take a look at the Arc Generation Community Playthrough forum, and take a look at the Playcast for the regular monthly playthrough and the Collector Cast. Now, as of this recording, the Arc Generation database is still up, so I can still keep track of how many copies of Deep Space Waifu I have, but I'm going to have to export that because I know that they're having some site issues.
Yeah, well, hopefully they'll be able to get that all ironed out, and we'll be able to continue to utilize that resource.
Sounds good to me.
All right, so let's dive into our question of the month, which I threw out a couple of days ago on our Discord server and up on social media. And that is, think of a classic shooter that deserves a remake. How would you change it up? And right out of the gate, Viz said, for a make a good shmup better answer, Thunder Force 4. There's lots of kinks with the visual clarity, enemy telegraphing, and visual and collision visual effects that need to be spruced up. Could also benefit from buffing the blade weapon. For a make a bad shmup good answer, Bioship Paladin. It's a good concept, but it looks and sounds so ugly. And I jokingly replied to Viz on the Discord and said, "You hurt me. You hurt my heart. You wound me."
No, I mean, I can see where he's coming from on this. The graphics themselves and the soundtrack's pretty awesome in the original release, but the voice samples are lovingly bad.
Oh, yes.
It could definitely be spruced up. The graphics could use a little bit of overhaul as well. And you could sort of give it what the M2 treatment, right, and put in different soundtracks on there. You know, put a remake soundtrack, and you could have the classic, and then you could have the overall of the other one. That seems to be the way that people are going now, right? You have the modern effect, and you can switch back to the classic.
I mean, I guess you would have to have M2 give it another treatment, because technically they did the port on the Switch.
Then you could throw in some crazy stuff in there. We could call it the the new Thunder Force 4, Thunder Force 4 plus Alpha Lightning Force, Lightning Strikes Again.
Yeah.
The jokes write themselves at this point.
Oh, absolutely. Thunder Force 4, Part Dia.
Yeah, shoot a chicken. It's been
Something
ages
like
since
that.
I've seen Hot Shots. Especially Part 2.
Yeah, same.
Duke Togo says Dark Souls. Everybody needs to play this. Wait, I'm sorry. Duke Togo says Sinistar. Add multiplayer where you compete for Cinnabons and steal them from others. I like that idea. Another is Sylpheed. This time in fully rendered 3D, but still flat poly, so now you're fully path traced ray tracing.
Huh.
Yeah, I like both those ideas. I gotta steal those.
Yeah, Sylpheed could benefit from a glow up like that. So I could see that being pretty nifty. Mari chimed in and said, Galaga, Mari label. Basically, Space Invaders Extreme, but for Galaga instead. Specifics are a bit hazy, but multiple shot types would definitely be a thing.
Overdrone says, Crime Biohazard Battle would be interesting indeed. Obviously, I'd update the graphics, and sound could be CD quality. Not sure how the soundtrack could be improved apart from that, to be honest. Yeah, Biohazard Battle, that's a good one that we need to cover on the podcast.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do so. We'll get to it. A Roguish Ham said, Alpha Mission. Acquiring and swapping armor in concept is really neat, but I never enjoyed the game. I think it would be awesome as a shmup or slash Mega Man kind of thing. And stop with the stupid letters. Use icons, please.
Yeah, well, isn't that some of the way that Zanuck does it? Doesn't Zanuck use letters? Or am I getting things construed as in numbers instead?
It's numbers, but yeah, same kind of idea.
Whenever I see those numbers in Zanuck, I sort of think of like the speaking spell. Which is, you know, when it just comes out wrong. 1, 2. You know, heck, I take the speaking spell from Thunder Force any day over that.
Huh.
Germinator says, Alpha Mission 2. I want the armor system to be proper kits though. Shot change and special while it's equipped. Really, I think this could just benefit from some modern design sensibilities. A bit smaller hitbox couldn't hurt. And maybe a lighter penalty for death beyond total power loss if you don't have the K icon. In terms of games with Xevious DNA though, it really hit some good notes. Yeah. I played Alpha Mission, but I don't think I played Alpha Mission 2. What are your thoughts?
Alpha Mission 2 is a neat game that definitely takes some time to wrap your head around. I got that one in the bundle that I bought when I got my Neo Geo CD, and I haven't put a lot of time into it, but it is one that I want to cover at some point just because of kind of how unique it is.
Sounds like another case for the Mister to me.
Yeah. Desmaku says, Blazing Star. More balanced stage design and enemies, and give score extends.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair. I would like a Blazing Star remake. And upon that, you could also say Viewpoint could probably use wouldn't have to change the music, but you could certainly benefit from modern technology and modern sensibilities, or even if you went with more of the flat look that it's known for, you could throw in ray tracing. A la Duke Togo.
Similar to what Duke Togo said. Maybe just do it all instead of pre-rendered sprites like the original has. Just do it all in flat shaded polygons and high resolution sprites and backgrounds, and that could look pretty slick.
Corkman77 says, "How about Lords of Thunder? There could be HD arrange mode with the shop system. Could add a bunch of new shot and melee weapons. Then, of course, there's the arcade version without the stage select and shop system for the 1cc shmup players. There's also a re-record soundtrack by some C-tier metal band you forgot about in the 80s. Kicks or Faster Pussycat comes to mind. Yeah, I think Lords of Thunder would also do pretty well as being brought forward. You could do the change of the graphics a little bit, and you could always have like the alternate. Here's the Sega CD, and here's the TurboGrafx 16. I think that you could also throw in a video editor on it, right? You can make your own 128p super plays, just like Tony Hawk.
Right.
For those of you who didn't get that last part, Tony Hawk actually directed and edited the commercial. I should say edited the commercial for Lords of Thunder in the U.S.
Oh yes. Well, and to Corkman's point about the music, unless you want to pull songs from their back catalog, you're a little too late with Kicks because they broke up earlier this year. But that could be interesting.
Now someone's going to take and mix the soundtrack for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 into Lords of Thunder.
Oh, or put the Lords of Thunder music in Tony Hawk.
Both sound pretty good to me.
Louis G says, I'd love to see a Euroshmup classic fixed up. A game like Xenon 2 has some good ideas, but the gameplay execution is awful. If you want to rescue a less crappy game, Apidia is a fairly solid R-Type clone, but the first world is too drawn out. Condense it a little, fix it up a bit, and put it back out. Or fix Battle Squadron's anemic power-up system and rebalance the game for it. Yeah, Battle Squadron for sure, I think, could benefit from an upgrade with rebalancing. It was already a good-looking game, but kind of brutal in the wrong way. So I think if you took that game and tweaked it some, you really could have something that would be a lot more approachable.
You know, he does give me a good idea, though. We were going to say this for a little bit later when we announce this, but by the time anyone's listening to this, it's going to be pretty well into November anyway. So we're going to be doing a DOS shmup battle, right?
Yep.
In December for having 3. It would be sort of fun maybe to do next year to have a Amiga shmup battle, because a lot of these probably aren't going to be worth going in depth, but it would be neat to do sort of a quick touch on these.
Right. Yeah, and that's kind of the idea.
Horse Takai 45 says Dragon Spirit. Mix it with, of course, new graphics and stuff, but also a smaller hitbox instead of random power-ups. Get an experience system and collect gems when you defeat enemies and all that. Use those gems to spend the health and firepower and other upgrades and stuff, like changing your dragon's color, maybe add little griffins or something for sport. Just go all in on the RPG elements while also retaining the difficulty of the arcade version. I'm sort of rating this like, not almost a Fantasy Star there, Fantasy Zone.
Well, yeah, and the interesting thing about this is that, you know, we've already covered Veritra, which I feel like is sort of halfway there.
Is it Living on a Prayer?
Something like that. But I think that's a step in that direction. Obviously horizontal instead of vertical, but yeah, this sounds cool. I could dig this. Rudon Sprites says, if I'm being honest, I've never been a fan of remakes. Sorry, that's not helpful. I think the classics are classics for a reason. I personally would prefer a new game /IP or spin-off or something like that. I'm weird and fussy about it, so don't mind me.
Zeta Metroid says, how about Fantasy Zone? It's much loved and often remembered and referenced in modern Sega properties, but we haven't had a new game in 30 years. It has been some roguelite elements already, just to build more on that. Rogues are super popular these days. Opa Opa shall fly again. Now, in some ways, yes, we haven't had a new game in a while, but you have Fantasy Zone 2, which was sort of thrown about there. I mean, M2 did a lot of work on that to make that into a proper arcade game. And then you had the Sega 3D Classics that came out for the 3DS, where that was there. Then you have the Weird Maze game, and it was sort of redone for the 5200 series. So it's not like it's been forgotten. It's just that the arcade version is the version that almost everyone remembers and plays, and that's how many ports did that thing get? At least 20.
I mean, the most recent Fantasy Zone thing that we got was the Sega Ages version from M2 that kind of has a new arrange mode, if you will. But yeah, a new Fantasy Zone game or a remake in this style could be promising.
Yeah, I think the last thing that we could have gotten that was a little bit different was the one that came out for NEC Avenue, right? That was canceled for the PC Engine CD that combined Space Harrier and Fantasy Zone.
Yeah.
Space Fantasy Zone.
Yeah, Space Fantasy Zone.
Yeah. So I think that was the last thing where it was a little bit different gameplay or a little bit mixed up. It's not the traditional shooter there. I don't know what you put Space Harrier in because you are moving forward, so it may be a shmup-like.
Right. A Harrier-like. Huh.
Oh, jeez. Harrier-like indeed.
Rad's Rontgen says, I grew up with Gradius, and I always thought that spending a power-up to adjust your speed was awful. It took Toho to teach me how valuable being able to pump the brakes was, and I was able to enjoy the genre as a whole. I think Drainus does a nice job of handling speed. Yeah, I mean, a Gradius game that maybe just gave you variable speed control would be nice, so that you don't have to rely on power-ups to adjust it, and then you could worry about your power-ups for other things. So much of the frustration of, I think, recovery, and one of the things that contributes largely to Gradius syndrome, as we like to call it, is that lack of speed.
Yeah, you know, with Gradius, it has such a history that at this point it's sort of what's expected. You know, working in IT, we sort of have a joking phrase of it's broken, but we're used to it.
Yeah.
And I think it aptly fits here. There's just so much history in Gradius that you can't really call it Gradius without having it there. It's just synonymous, right? You can't have Gradius without the syndrome. Otherwise, it's something else. And I think that there are some of the other games that tried to deal with this in different ways. I mean, even Life Force tried to break out of that a little bit.
Yeah.
It's really hard once you've hit that formula to break out of the mold and do something different while still retaining the original. So I could definitely see Gradius as an option, but realistically, I don't see it. At least in my opinion, I don't see how you can pull that off. It would have to be some sort of weird thing like, let's say, all the ships transformed into women that were somehow flying on ships. You know, that just sounds weird, doesn't it? No one would be crazy enough to try that, or let alone make a sequel.
Yeah.
So, Jack Darks from Team Grybancer Fox says, Star Force. I would help keep its endless nature, but throw in a lot of new music, bosses, and mini-bosses to keep it interesting. I would also throw in a rank to make the game even harder. The more times you play Stage 24, also known as Infinity. P.S. Final Star Force and 8 Forces suck. Alright, strong opinions here. So, yeah, Star Force is definitely one that we should add to our list. and I remember playing this game back. Oh boy, I can't believe I'm using these words back in the day, but back when I was a young man. So it didn't leave enough of an impression on me at this time. At the time, just not unlike what Gradius left an impression, Life Force left an impression. Star Force really didn't do much for me. I don't know. I'll have to head back to it and give it another shot.
Yeah, I want to say I probably played it on the NES at some point at a friend's house. One of them either had it or rented it. But I do remember playing Star Force on an arcade cabinet as a kid at a random restaurant along the highway that we stopped at on the way to visit my uncle in the next state over. And I remember being very disappointed because my quarter did not last very long. But that's what happens when you're 10 years old.
Well, let's be honest here. It wasn't a random restaurant. It was probably a Perkins, right?
No, it was a mom and pop.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah. Scoush says, Gradius without the syndrome?
Yeah. Again, we just talked about, but I think that if you're going to have to do Gradius without the syndrome, you're going to have to make it some sort of weird offshoot, right? Like a Gaiden or Odomedius, or maybe even some weird thing with Proteus at this point.
Possibly.
So Tetraphobia says, how about Blazing Star? But they can fix the translation. Only joking. I think the game is very characterful as is. I don't remember the translation for Blazing Star. Is it as bad as All Your Base?
Well, I mean, it's all the little things, like get it more, or there's just a few little quotes like that in the game. I don't know that there's much to the translation, but yeah, I think if you changed that, it would take away a little bit of the charm.
I would, back in before COVID and stuff, where everyone had those inspirational, like it says leadership, and then has the eagle soaring or stuff like. You know what I'm talking about? Those type of posters.
Right.
I would just like to put one up on the wall at work that just says "Move Zig," or "Give it more."
Old Man Burley said, Silkworm, a chopper and a jeep co-op could make for a very interesting shmup. And of course, that is the way that the original works. And so I actually replied and said, well, how would you change it up? And Horse Techie 45 jumped in later and said, well, Swiv or Firepower 2000 is basically that, but top down, with some additional elements. But yeah, I think Silkworm could benefit from a remake with maybe a bit of rebalancing, because I always felt like the original Silkworm was still better than the pseudo sequels it got, but still kind of rough.
You know what I say to this? Give me an unlockable Tesla truck instead of a Jeep. Let's go. Maybe a school bus or something on here. DLC, throw in some loot crates. Why not?
There you go. We got to get Miss Frizzle in the shmup verse.
There we go. And then we put. Well, you can see it just like what was it with Rocket League? Now I saw an ad where they're putting in the cars from Cars. So why not at this point? Everything is on there. You can select instead of pressing A, B, and C to select your character in Battle Garega, you hold up, down, left, right, B, A, and then you unlock Miss Frizzle. Why not?
Oh man.
Anything to get those tie-ins.
Yeah, why not? Sculpt711 says Gradius 2. I'd include all additional content from ports and remix them in the arcade style and touch soundtrack up to use YM2151 plus PCM synthesizers with modern chip tune techniques. Maybe make soundtrack remixes based on different chip combos such as the SPC 700, PSG plus YM2413, or 2A03 plus VRC6.
Wasn't there someone who recently did that? They put the TurboGrafx 16, but they used the 6800 soundtrack. I thought that there was something similar to that where they were doing with this, but yeah, basically what you're asking for is like an M2 port. I think that would be pretty cool to get all the different versions of Gradius 2 on there, and you could switch between the soundtracks.
Yeah, it would be kind of neat to have Gradius 2 arcade version that sort of had the bones level that was in the MSX and PC Engine ports retrofitted into it, or with a couple of the additional areas from the Famicom version done in that style and kind of retrofit into the game. Could be interesting.
I still can't believe that the Famicom version, the hardest part was that the flames in stage 1. Once you got past that, the rest of the game was pretty easy.
Yeah.
Or the fact that you can kill that spider. That was wild too.
Oh yes.
Man, the Famicom version is so different on that. Alright. So, Bunny's Bunrena says, Toho 4 and 5, the visibility is whack sometimes and the art is suspicious, but now they are by default important and pretty fun. Yeah, I would have to agree that we need to get some of the Tohos modernized. And I was trying to think of how would you name that? Now you can own the entire Toho-ology?
Yeah, why not?
I mean, 1 through 3 was by itself, right? That was its own standalone. But then after that, it became... And why it is following the path of the Ultima, now I think about it, right? 1 through 3, and then 4 was the way of the Avatar, and it brought about the rest of the stuff, so... Yeah, why not? If Richard Garriott can do it, I think that Zoom can do it.
Sure.
You know, and maybe with a special edition comes with a copy of Zoom beer, his favorite beer. Each special edition comes with a different beer.
There you go.
You have to be over 18 to buy.
Oh, right.
Well, I mean, it has to be 0 at that point, right? If the collector's edition is... If they start selling Toho to minors, could you imagine the problems?
Huh. Right. Goji Guy says, that's tricky. If I like a shmup, I probably want to leave well enough alone. And if it's one I don't like, I probably don't want to touch it. But, if there was one shmup I think could use an arrange mode or remake, it would be Metal Black. I love that game, but I'd love a version that removes the RNG moments and gives a score bonus from beam battles and using energy. A better score system would encourage me to revisit it. Also, a version of Gradius 3 that doesn't make me want to pull my hair out would be nice. I replied to Goji Guy in the Discord, and I said, to the Gradius 3 point, I said, just so you know, that's the Super NES version.
Yeah, pretty close to that, yeah. And the interesting thing about Metal Black, wouldn't you call G. Darius sort of the one that has its own arrange mode and has all the different flashy hyper laser battles?
That, or, you know, Border Down being a sort of spiritual sequel to Metal Black. One could say.
I get what he's saying there. I get what he's saying. And then having a range mode would be pretty cool, too. I wonder... you couldn't really... I wouldn't change too much on the graphics or anything at all. I think for the most part it worked pretty well. You still got that disco ball that was with the stage 2, right?
Right.
And it was a shoots there, but... maybe making the endings make a little more sense, too, would be nice.
It would be nice to get a better port of it. that included the I can't remember what it's called now off the top of my head, but we covered it when we talked about the game on the podcast. The
oh, you mean the best of
arrange
Zuntata?
mode. Well, the special arrange mode that is right now limited to the one arcade board that one of the developers owns, and brings out once in a while to hook up in a bar somewhere in Japan.
I don't want to call it Metal Black Edition, but that's that. No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that would be nice. Also to get maybe a couple extra tracks by Zuntata would be nice as well.
Yeah.
No, definitely a good choice for bringing forward into more modern stuff, because the treatment has gotten so far with the arcade archives was good, but then it got the. And don't get me wrong, I don't hate City Connection, but the fact that they're just throwing Saturn ISOs with an emulator and calling it good is not a good way to get any money from me.
Right.
Though I do hear the Batsugun port is not too bad. Regduran says, Lancer. I love a remake of that game, though I'm not sure what kind of scoring system I add to it. Maybe something that encourages you to switch weapons and use them all rather than finding one that you like and going through that one throughout the rest of the game. Yeah, I think that Lancer is one of those that I like what we have. It's gotten a lot of attention. Maybe not so much as a remake. Maybe a sequel would be a better choice in this day and age, where you get the original one with it, but then they expand upon this.
Yeah, I mean, there's already been that new port on the Switch that adds additional features and stuff. So yeah, I mean, maybe do a Lancer 2 and then package the Switch port in, and then you could have a deluxe physical or something like that. That'd be pretty cool.
Something tells me, though, that Lancer will be stuck at just like Beyond Good and Evil is. They keep announcing that there'll be a sequel one day, but they never get anywhere on it, and they just keep repackaging the original game.
Yeah. 05 Pro said the Great Maho Daisakusen, but remove the red and blue polarity rubbish.
Yeah, I think Great Maho Daisakusen would be another good example of something that could be given a lot more. It's a very interesting concept, right? That they never really did too much more on after the initial game. So I would certainly welcome an update on that. Orc Commander says, zeroing. What if you could use a tractor beam to catch their enemies and use them as additional firepower? Kind of like G Dryas. Readjusting stage length, and some enemies would not be as bulky, and their hit point values to help with the pacing, which can be kind of glacial at times. Yeah, I understand too. Sometimes you just want that zig to move.
My only response to Orc Commander is, what you say?
Yeah, zero. I think zeroing will be sort of stuck in there too. Like, yeah, at some point it probably could have used a sequel, but I think they'll just keep re-releasing this version, and it's become sort of the joke is more so than the game,
right?
So I don't think that will. I think that the only way that we will get something that may have even surpassed this is if they did a remake and the cutscenes were all acted out. They're all FMVs.
Well, I for one would be pleased to see a YouTube video from Tatsujin Company announcing another Zero Wing game, as long as they, you do the someone set up us the sequel.
Oh, geez, yes, that would certainly gain some attention. So, what about your picks?
I've been trying to figure out what I want to do here. because it's difficult to say. Now, of course, as always, I picked this because it ties into the game that we're covering this month. But thinking about this, I feel like it's a good opportunity to take a game that is not very strong and maybe retool it so that it could be improved upon. A game that I have a certain fondness for because I played it a bunch as a kid, but
1942.
But I know objectively isn't that good, is Twin Eagle. In theory, Twin Eagle has some good ideas, but it's not super well executed, and it definitely has some jank that in its current form adds to the charm, but it could definitely be ironed out to be much better. I think the sequel did a lot to make it more fun, but the original still is promising. So if you could take the original game and balance it better and make it more interesting and do some cool things with it, I think you could have something that would be a fun and ultimately rewarding experience.
Yeah, I can see that.
What about you?
Yeah, for me, I would probably pick something like Proto Shmups or the long lines that Duke mentioned. It was good. They mentioned Sinistar, another shmup that I would definitely throw in there, and I know it was mentioned a little bit earlier, is Galaga. I would like to see an option for being able to capture other ships. I think that Nintendo has a really good thing going on where they pull in like Tetris 99, Pac-Man 99, F-Zero 99, where they take that idea and make it a battle royale. I think that a Galaga battle royale would be pretty neat. The ability to supplement your livestock by destroying enemies that have captured your player's ship would be a good idea. Going back to that even Space Invaders has been maybe a little bit overdone at this point, and so has Arkanoid. But to go back and revisit some of the stuff you could deal with, Gradius would be another example that people put up earlier to do sort of like a battle royale, or Gradius 99, where it repeats like the first stage over and over again, and whoever can survive the longest, or destroy the most big cores, wins. There's a lot of different ways you can go on with this. You can, if we were to take in Gradius Battle Royale, or not Gradius, sorry, Galaga Battle Royale, you could call it. Now that's what I call Galactic Dancing.
Oh, jeez.
Or that could be a soundtrack set. I just see a vinyl on there.
Yep.
But something along the lines with that, right? You need a proto shmup, something with easy to understand mechanics that you can put in so the gameplay loop is simple, but then you could turn it into a larger multiplayer game. That's why I think Pac-Man Versus did so well, Pac-Man 99, and why F-Zero 99 is doing so well, and even some of the other stuff like Pac-Man Versus or Pac-Man Championship would do pretty well.
Yeah, I think if they did it right and they maybe did a send up of the entire kind of Galaga canon, or at least the primary Galaga canon, and did Galaxian, Galaga, Gaplus, and Galaga 88 kind of all smushed together in one package as a Galaga 99 sort of thing, that could be really cool. I would enjoy that.
I think Namco would too, because they could certainly use the profits from it.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone who contributed and shared your thoughts with us. We certainly appreciate it, and it's always kind of fun hearing the different opinions and perspectives. let's roll into our focus shot and have a little discussion about Gunbane.
You probably did a heck of a lot more than I did for this past discussion, because I played a little bit with Type C, a little bit with Type B, and then I played the hardest game of all. Will I be able to check out what NG Dev Team's store in time?
Yeah. Well, on that note, the NG Dev Direct did sell out of the both the standard and limited edition of the game within about a month?
It was like, what?
Maybe less?
No, I think it was like 24, 48 hours, I think. Usually it goes pretty quick. Like the last time they did Razi on EX, that sold through like almost instantaneously. I think that not too many people heard about this one beforehand, so this is a lot of word of mouth. And by the time it went through there, because they didn't have that many copies to go with anyways, right? It was like 1,000 copies.
Oh, well, there you go.
But here's the thing with that. This was sort of like the first sell-through. Next year, they're going to have some more that they're going to sell through, right? And they're going to keep printing runs.
Right. Yeah. This initial print is only an initial print, and then my understanding is starting in January, when the first print ships, they're just going to open the floodgates and people can just place orders, and they'll probably take orders and then print them as they get enough orders to justify doing print runs.
And I'm really glad to hear that, because this is a game that needs to be shared with many people, and NG Dev Team has always been a little bit skeptical of putting their games out on the eShop, because they're afraid they aren't going to sell so well, and printing physical copies of them.
Right.
So I am happy that more people will be able to play this.
Yeah, it'll be a good thing. Yeah, and so the last time we spoke about this, I was saying that I was frustrated because I was close to my Type C clear, but I hadn't quite got it yet. I'm happy to report now that I have my Type C clear, which I sort of got incidentally. I'd been practicing, I had a couple of bad runs, and I was just sort of going through the motions, and I at one point I sort of like, well, okay, this probably isn't the run, but I'll just play through. Well, it ended up being the run, and so that's usually how it goes. You sort of stop caring, and that's when it happens. But now I am focused on my Type B clear, and the thing that's frustrating, I think, is that I'm starting to realize one of my Achilles' heels is that I am too invested in trying to score. Part of that is because I want to engage with the game's systems as much as I can, because it's part of learning and appreciating the game on a deeper level. But I was stuck in a loop earlier this evening where I couldn't get out of stage 1 multiple runs in a row because I kept making silly mistakes, or there's the part at the very beginning of stage 1 where if you sort of lead that first group of enemies that comes down along one side of the screen and then kind of loop back around them, you can then bomb to get them and then a whole bunch of other enemies that are there at the top of the screen, so that you can immediately start the game with a ton of stars and boost your score right away. And I kept either running into one of those enemies or then making a mistake at the first mid-boss and getting hit by a bullet or something. So I was pretty frustrated earlier. I do think I'm close to getting a Type B clear. It's just a matter of making a few less mistakes, really. One thing also that I am realizing is I am not really using the hyper, the hyper feature much. I was watching Desmaku, his Type B clear that he posted on his YouTube channel with commentary, and he ends up using the hyper quite a bit. I tend not to use it because I like to be able to route through the stages without having to use it, because I want to plan my bombs for certain times so I can maximize the score. And one of the things that I said earlier about I try to score, which is an Achilles heel, because then it sometimes prevents me from getting a clear as quickly as I'd like to. But I feel as though the scoring in Gunvein, or the survival in Gunvein, is so indelibly tied to scoring, because scoring helps you build the number of lives that you have, that it is incumbent upon you as a player to try to score at least marginally so that you can continue to hit those milestones. Because in the base game, in the normal or the intense difficulty, kind of your standard normal difficulty, you get an extend every 600,000 points. Well, if you do it right in stage 1, you can hit the 600k mark as you take out the boss and get that first extend. I've been able to push the stage 1 score then with this end stage total and adding up all the bonus stuff past 800,000. And I've seen at least one replay where you can push it past 1 million points in stage 1. So you think about that, and then you're already at your first extend before the end of stage 1, and then you're getting another extend early in stage 2, and then even another extend probably by or before the end of stage 2, if you're doing it right. So you're really incentivized to score quite a bit because of that. So I feel like scoring is just an extension of survival in many ways. And I think that's one of the reasons why I continue to push myself to score more, so that I can try to beef up the number of lives that I have, in part because I continue to make some of these silly mistakes and have lame deaths and things like that. So for me, being able to go into that final boss fight with stage 5 and then the final kind of TLB form with as many resources as possible is what kind of then helps me tank my way through it. Maybe that's not the right approach, but doggone it, that's how I do.
Thank you, Stuart Smalley. No, no, you're certainly doing better than I am, but it's one of the things that I think that this year and playing a lot of Gunvein has taught me is I need to, at some point in the next year or so, invest in a arcade stick. I think it's not, the analog sticks allow me to do stuff, but not everyone is a super player like Gus, and we need or at least I feel I need the precision that comes with an arcade stick, where my thumb will just naturally rest on the analog stick, and I find myself making sometimes just the little movements,
right,
like that, where with an arcade stick you're making very deliberate movements, right? That thing's, you're not going to just accidentally tilt it left or right, unless maybe there's an earthquake going on or you had too much coffee, but it's just something that I've been noticing. If I want to get to a higher level in the way that I play, that I'm going to need a little bit better equipment than your standard DualShock 4 or your Xbox controller.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, one of the advantages with Gunbane is it's actually designed with analog control in mind as well. So when I've been playing in handheld mode, I'm actually, on the Switch, I'm actually playing it in handheld mode, meaning my Switch is in the flip grip and I've got analog control that I'm using. Unfortunately, I have not been able to clear handheld mode yet, which is I'm salty about, but I'm still hoping to clear it with at least one character before the end of the year. I'm probably going to prioritize Type C because I feel like that is my best bet.
Yeah, it's always better. Type C is definitely, you can go in with a wrecking ball and sort of create your own Bamba.
Sure.
Alright, so let's move on to Shmup News. Outside Danmaku, the developer behind Cosmo Dreamer and Like Dreamer, is remaking an earlier title, Redneck All-Stars, with a new Swing-By edition. I have not played anything other than Cosmo Dreamer, I have played Like Dreamer. Actually, okay, so I played both, but I don't remember hearing about this title at all. Have you played this?
No, I want to say this was released 5 or 6 years ago, something like that, originally. And so this will be just a new and improved version of that game, I guess. And I think, if I remember correctly, Redneck All-Stars is more of a caravan game. And it was free to download initially. I don't know if the new version will or not, but yeah. So anyway, if you like those games, though, it's probably worth a look.
I had to be really careful when I pronounce that. I almost called it Redneck All-Stars. I almost thought it was a game with Jeff Foxworthy, Bill Dunham, and Larry the Cable Guy.
If you spend late nights with caffeine and joystick levers, you might be a shmup fan.
There we go. We got the next one's just going to have you imitating Jeff Foxworthy.
There you go. There is a new Gradius fan game called Universe that was recently highlighted by Jamers in a YouTube video.
Does it have the syndrome?
I watched a little bit of, not Jamers' video, but another video that was highlighting the game, and it looks pretty impressive. So we'll definitely have to check that out.
Remember, it's not a true Gradius game if it doesn't have the syndrome.
Ah, yes.
The demo for the forthcoming Sega Genesis / Mega Drive Shmup ZPF is available and has 3 stages to try. I feel really bad about this one because I downloaded the demo and then posted it in the Discord and then never tried it. So this is on me. I don't know what it is about October, but apparently I have to get sick at least once in order to make it through. And I ran out of a lot of time because I got sick after going to a very nice fall festival.
Oh, yeah. Crystal Comet has a page on Steam right now to wishlist. Slated for a February 2024 release, this is an auto-scrolling twin-stick shooter from Rudon Sprites.
M2 held another DDP DOJ stream in October and detailed new modes, alternate soundtrack options, as well as showing off some of the special pre-order items. Now, this is coming out, was it Q1 2024, or have they given it a closer date?
Well, I think it was originally supposed to be December of this year. So, as far as I know, it's still on track for a early December release.
GOTY right there. Maybe Mark might say GOAT.
He might, yes. AMP is a forthcoming Star Fox-like game from Sprylosaur Games, slated for a 2024 release. You can wishlist it on Steam now. And from what I saw in the footage that's on the Steam page, it looks like it's got a major Tron visual inspiration. That sort of line art design. aesthetic.
There's been a lot, I don't know what you want to call it, but recently there's been a lot of Star Fox-like games, or Star Fox-inspired games.
Yeah, Star Fox-inspired games and Space Harrier-inspired games are kind of a thing right now.
Astro Gunners has been updated to version 093 on Steam, showing that development continues on this early access horizontal Danmaku shooter. Astro Gunner, this sounds familiar. Maybe I've seen a demo of this, been having a chance to try this. Have you?
Yes, this one is worth grabbing. I got an early access code for this from the dev. Gosh, it's almost been maybe 3 years ago now. And at one point, I thought maybe development of the game had stalled and had been abandoned. So I'm glad to see that it's not, and that they're still working on it, because even though the game is still in early access and it hasn't reached a sort of 1.0 final release version yet, it's a pretty solid title. And definitely, if you're into Danmaku and you're not averse to horizontal Danmaku, like an Akai Katana or Pro Gear or Battle Traverse kind of thing, then I would say it's well worth a look.
Excellent. I'll have to give it a shot.
There's a demo that's available now for a homebrew version of R-Type that has been programmed for the Sega Genesis and Mega Drive. And based on the footage I've seen so far, it is looking very much like the arcade original. And I guess it's going to have two soundtrack versions in the game. One that is a close approximation to the arcade soundtrack based on what you can do with the YM2612 chip, but then also something else that's kind of an arranged soundtrack version. So it looks like it's going to be kind of cool.
And what systems is this coming out for?
It's for the Genesis and Mega Drive.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I could definitely see this being pretty fun to do. Laserpidium from the Re-Team is out now on Steam as a horizontal shooter that appears to take inspiration from Hellfire, along with other classic STGs. Hellfire is another one that I wanted to cover on here. Sign me up.
Yeah, and this has kind of a slick graphical look, but I'm not sure about the gameplay other than what I saw in the video that's on the Steam page, but it looks promising. Dangan GB, the homebrew Game Boy Danmaku game, now has a Game Boy Color sequel, Dangan 2, and it is free from developer Snorpung's itch.io page. And shout out to Octane, who does the weekly Blind Kumite competitions on his YouTube channel, and he actually got a group together that did a Dangan GB and Dangan 2 Blind Kumite here a few weeks ago, right after the game released. And yeah, this looks pretty good. So yeah, I was thinking in some discussion earlier on the Discord about Game Boy shoot 'em ups and stuff, and there was some talk about homebrew Game Boy shooters. I'm thinking at some point we should maybe do a free-for-all month where we link to all sorts of free-to-download Game Boy homebrew shmups, and everybody can play some and talk about the ones they want, and we can just kind of have a fun little discussion about a bunch of these little games.
Yeah, but it's going to be pretty hard to find anybody who wants to play Game Boy games, right? Where would we find someone who wants to do that?
I don't know. I mean, myself, obviously, but I would hope that others would at least be interested in checking them out.
No, I'm just kidding you. Steel Surge Revolution is a Pico 8 based caravan shooter from Loki Striker, available now on itch.io. I always like these sort of these type of homebrew product. There's always something neat that comes out of there, especially when it's sort of a it's something that's being ported. Like someone even trying to do Dragon's Lair on the MSX. Let's do something, something crazy that you just don't expect. Right. They always, when you've got such a low ceiling, to see some of the creativity that comes out is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and they did Steel Surge Revolution as the weekly caravan competition deal in Shmup Junkie's Discord here recently as well.
Nice.
Limited Run Games has pre-orders open now for a PS4 physical release of Danmaku Unlimited 3, and pre-orders close December 3rd.
You mispronounced the name of the game there. It's Dan Masochist Unlimited 3.
Yes, foreshadowing.
Very Okay Vinyl has a vinyl soundtrack release of Cotton Fantastic Night Dream. Where have I heard that game before? Seems so familiar.
And I've got this on order already.
Yeah, it comes with a bag of willows.
Probably not. Coolor Research Labs has shown a short video on Twitter/X of a Super NES Danmaku game called Rex Nobilis that is in development.
Does this one come with slowdown?
No. Based on the screen or the short video that is on the Twitter page, there's not a hint of slowdown, and there's a lot of bullets on screen. So I'm not sure how they're pulling it off, but
Super FX chip.
It's impressive so far.
Super FX 2.
SA1.
SA1. Yeah. They just put there's a Cyclone 5 inside. No, I mean, if they can do that with the Super Nintendo game, if they can make this on real hardware, that's very impressive. Is the Super Nintendo, as we all know, was not known for the graphical, well, I should say not graphical, but for the prowess of its CPU.
Yeah. I mean, there are games that manage to do a good job with that. I mean, you've got early examples like Darius Twin, which we covered, and then later examples like Space Megaforce or Super Aleste. But yeah, I feel like Slowdown is one of the features, I'll say, of many Super Nintendo shmups.
Shino Ruby Pink Label has been released on the XR Arcadia platform. Was the original released Shino Ruby, was that released consoles? I don't remember.
Yeah, it's on PC and Switch and PS4, and got a Switch and PS4 physical through Red Art Games here within the last few months. That hasn't shipped yet, but I think they sold through all the pre-orders, if I remember correctly.
Nice. Yeah, anytime I see stuff on the XR Arcadia platform, it's like sort of like the Neo Geo. It sort of like contact me in about 20 years when the games are $3,000, $4,000 a piece. They're more like $250. So give me that the cheaper price. I can make it happen. But if you're going to charge me $2,500 for a game, that's too rich for my blood.
Yeah. Super XYX continues to be retooled, and a new character, Taurus, has been added.
Wow.
I need to check that out because I haven't really put time into it since the new demo version has come out with kind of the game being moved over to Game Maker Studio 2. So I definitely need to give that a look. And
Super XYX might just be one of those games like Zero Ranger where I go back to it every so often and play it for a little bit. Definitely like the loop of that game.
Yep.
The forthcoming helicopter shooter, shoot 'em up, Mr. Helicats. No. The forthcoming helicopter shoot 'em up, Helicats, is now confirmed for a November 13th release on Steam. Geez, that's not too long from now.
No, it's not. Strictly Limited Games is releasing a physical version of Yu Suzuki's Air Twister game, and it's the first in a series of what they're calling speedrun releases, where no pre-orders are required and will ship immediately. This is that Space Harrier type game from Yu Suzuki.
Yeah, this is on my short list for checking out stuff, but I just need more time. That's all I want for Christmas is more time to play games.
Indeed. You need to be like Burgess Meredith in the Twilight Zone, where an H bomb hits the town he's in, and he survives because he's in the bank vault, and then you can just go home and play all your Danmaku games.
Was that also the one where he's trying to read books and then he drops his glasses?
Yeah.
Was that a different one? That was, yes. Okay.
It
wasn't the one.
Time enough at last.
Yeah. And it wasn't the one where Captain Kirk's on a plane watching Gremlin. That was a different one.
No. But the embodiment of be careful what you wish for.
Yeah. Be careful what you Steam wish lists for.
Yes.
That's where I'm going now. Alright, so Athena's classic arcade shooter Dio has released on Arcade Archives. Very nice.
Yeah,
I think it's about time to cover it.
Never got a console port back in the day. Although the spiritual sequel, Shienryu, received a couple of ports. Radiant Silvergun is out now on Steam, and for those who ordered the physical from Limited Run Games, that is beginning to ship now. So
yeah, I just got my shipping order. Yeah, today I got a shipping order.
Oh yeah, nice.
1CC Games is working on another shooting game with more of a spooky Halloween theme called Silver Bullet. This is one of the ones that I think is on our short list as well to keep an eye out for. Yeah,
I mean, as well regarded as Space Moth DX and Star Hunter DX are, yeah, I could see this being another one that we'll need to keep our eyes on.
Yeah, I'm surprised it's not called Silver Bullet DX.
Yeah. Raging Blue Annihilation is coming next year and is the latest in what I understand from what little I was able to find in a long-running series of Doujin shooters, but there's been no new entry in this series for several years. And I don't know anything else about this series, but this at least looked cool from what I saw.
Typecast is a new twin-stick shooter from Official Electric and Gut Arcade, out now on Steam. Twin sticks are always fun because you can pick up it's more of a pick up and play. You can get people who normally don't play SDGs to play those.
Right.
So, stuff like Geometry Wars are always fun and engaging to get a couple minute playthroughs.
Sure. Valfaris Mechatherion is set for a November 21st release on PC, with console versions planned for 2024 release.
Yep, and this is a sequel to Valfaris, right?
Yeah, and Valfaris was more of a run and gun, well, sort of an action platformer / run and gun with a mech. And I think it had some shmup stages, but this one is actually full-on shmup. I appreciate the nod in the subtitle Mechatherion, because the soundtrack to the first game, and one assumes to the second game, was done by a former member of the band Celtic Frost, and of course Celtic Frost, one of their landmark albums was called To Megatherion, so that's kind of a neat little nod there. But this looks promising.
Yeah, I definitely enjoyed the first one. Looking forward to the second one. There's a forthcoming crossover event with Cave's Gothic Wa Maho Otome Mobile STG and their DDP SDOJ game, similar to what they had previously done with Death Smiles characters. And if any of you got that, that is board soup for me.
Well, this is big news. Devil Engine Ignition has finally been released as of November 9th after years of waiting. If you own the original game on Steam, you can purchase just the Ignition DLC, and if you don't, then you can buy the Devil Engine Complete Edition, which will have the original game and the DLC. The physical console release is still forthcoming, but I believe, if I understand correctly, that is going to include the ignition mode as well.
Very nice. It's good to see that this game is moving again, because I think that being buried by the publisher, I mean, the game was really taking off, and you had a lot of hype with the demo, and then it just sort of nosedived because of the publisher. And I hope to see that. Isn't the physical coming out via Beep?
You might be right. I don't remember for sure. We mentioned it a month or two ago.
But, I mean, it's good to see that it's getting out there again, right? This game deserves to be played by more people.
Yep.
Blade Sky is a new STG from Sugoi Dekai, and it's free on itch.io and has 3 levels. Alright. Can't beat that price.
Indeed. And finally, STG Builder has been updated again to version 1.0.24.109. I did not see a list of what had changed, but it's good that this continues to get updates and continue to be developed.
I can tell you one thing that changed: the version.
Indeed. Alright, well that is all the shmup news you can use. At least all the shmup news that we compiled for the episode today.
Alright, well let's talk about the game that we played in October. And that was Cotton Reboot. We had the participants of Horse Dekai 45, Drake Tungsten, Super Goat, Corkman 77, Tetraphobia, and one more quarter. So let's give a quick examination of the developer and the game itself. Cotton Reboot was developed by Rocket Engine Ltd. and published by Beep in February 2021 for PC, Nintendo Switch, and PS4. The game is essentially a high-level remake of the original Cotton arcade game, with new graphics, redone music, and new mechanics added to expand upon the original game's ideas. The original Cotton Fantastic Night Dreams arcade game released on April 1991 on the Sega 16 arcade hardware, and the reboot is based upon the Sharp X68000, which was released in 1993. The game centers around the namesake character Cotton, a witch who is obsessed with a type of candy called Willows. And I think it's more like she has a drug dependency based upon the Hex Maxium that is in Willows. So I think what they're trying to do here is they're trying to stage an intervention, and Cotton just keeps saying no. Now, what we could do here is we could insert some sort of joke here. This is your brain. This is your brain on Willows. Any question?
Oh, yes.
Well, the other thing I was sort of wondering about this too is this a story of someone who is hoping for the great pumpkin in order to get so goes trick or treating in order to get all these willows and ends up getting, like Charlie Brown, a rock? Or is this a story of a person who goes trick or treating and ends up giving her candy in order to save the world?
Yeah, I was gonna get to that.
Other ports of the original game came to the PC Engine CD-ROM 2, or CD-ROM, the PlayStation, and Neo Geo Pocket Color. Fairyland has been overtaken by an evil mist, which has paralyzed a prism of light. What was a once bright, colorful land is now engulfed in darkness. The fairies had all but given hope until a fairy named Silk happened upon a witch named Cotton. Silk pleaded to her for help, but Cotton is only interested in the willow candy. Silk bribed Cotton to help with the promise of willows as the spoils for defeating the darkness, and Cotton decided she would do anything for the candy, so she agreed to help. Now, again, I gotta wonder here, is this sort of like original Coke type situation, where they put the original Coke had cocaine in it? Is this just sort of this hex maxim that's in willows? Jeez, powerful stuff.
But this is one of those, as you sort of alluded to earlier, this is one of those that would qualify for, the meme of explain a film plot badly or explain a game plot badly. And it's basically greedy witch kills everything to get candy, then unwillingly gives the candy up to save the world.
Works for me. And then when at the very end, she's like, all right, well, you can't get your drugs here. This kingdom has some. I know this kingdom's got a guy, and I think he can sell you some drugs. So she just flies off as fast as she can.
Yep.
Gotta go to get that hit. Maybe she didn't hear about medicinal willows.
Medicinal willows. Wow. Oh my goodness. Is there what's the CBD equivalent of willows or of Tex-Mexium?
That's Hex-Mexium. That's the stuff you can't get over the counter, right? Tex-Mexium is over the counter. Hex-Mexium is the stuff that is prescription strength that requires a doctor's note. That's why she's so obsessed over the willows.
It all makes sense now.
Indeed, we're just like with Kevin Bacon here. We have 6 degrees to Tex-Mexium.
6 degrees. Oh man.
Alright, so gameplay, let's talk about this. Initially, as you play the reboot version as the Witch Cotton. Once you have beat the game, you unlock the ability to play as 3 other characters. They are Silk, the fairy who enlisted Cotton's help. Basically her drug pusher there, Silk. Apley, another witch who appeared in Cotton 2. And Needle, Apley's hat, who acts as her familiar. And Needle's sort of neat. It's sort of like playing as an option in Gradius, right? You have a very slim, very small hitbox, but it can make it so hard to determine where the heck you are on the screen because the game is pretty manic.
Yep.
Apley, yep. And the same thing could sort of be said about Silk, right? Silk is small and has a very small hitbox, but in some ways moves maybe a little bit too fast for the game. And with that small hitbox and that small sprite, it's a little bit hard to determine where you're at. If you're going to play the game, I highly recommend Apley or Cotton. And Apley sort of has a very neat, sort of like, it's almost like a claw, right? Like a pincer claw, the way that the shots fire. Where you got stuff on the top and the bottom, and they sort of converge. Her shot seems to be a lot more useful than Cotton's.
Right.
What are your thoughts on the characters?
Yeah, I definitely think that Apley is easier to use because of that. And even Needle I found to be a pretty good character to play with. Needle has this cool feature where the hat will shoot behind itself at an angle, like 45 degrees or thereabouts, both upper and lower once you power up a couple of times. So Needle has pretty good coverage, and I felt was a fun character to play with.
Yeah, I didn't have a chance to play too much with Needle, but I definitely played with Aptly. So, unlike the original arcade game, this modern take has a small character hitbox, which displays as a heart near the center of the screen on your character. And it's pretty easy to read where the hitbox is, with it, at least when you're looking at the character sprite, but it can be a little bit cumbersome when you're trying to dodge, because this game is manic and throws a lot of enemies at you. So, or just in general, there's a lot going on. So it can make it a little bit hard, and sometimes you get hit thinking that, oh, I actually could have avoided that had I realized where the hitbox was.
Yep.
So the game itself is a 3-button game. 1 button to fire both primary and secondary, which is your bombs. Similar to like Gradius, when you're pressing 1 button, you've got your one with your shot and the other one being the missile. Right. There's 1 button to activate magic. You can hold the button to charge the magic for a secondary effect. And 1 button to activate fever mode. Not to be confused with Dengue fever mode, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But it's basically like activating scoring mode.
Right.
And then you can also use it for getting rid of bullets, right? It does bullet cancel.
To an extent, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say the original arcade game was 3 buttons as well, but in the original, much like Gradius, you had 1 button for shot and then 1 button for your ground bombs. So I do appreciate the quality of life upgrade, if you will, where your regular forward shot and your bombs are on 1 button, so you're not having to deal with both of those.
As you destroy enemies, you earn experience to level up, which will power up the primary shot to higher levels and far more powerful for a larger spread. You can power up from level 1 to level 12, and then you max out at level 13. If you die, you lose nearly a full level. We'll have to gain more experience to fully power up again. You also gain some experience from obtaining crystals. Yeah, so the idea is that you get yellow crystals, right, in order to increase your shot power, so that way you can do more. But at the same time, if you die, then you lose it. And then the yellow crystals themselves, if you shoot through them, it turns into an upper and lower green shot, which makes dispatching of enemies easier. So it definitely has a nice dynamic, and we'll talk a little bit more with some of the crystals and the colors and what they mean. But I always like the give and take. It's a little bit different than your normal Danmaku. You know, here's your bomb, here's your shot, and then here's your focus fire.
Right.
Yeah, that's right stuff. Okay. As you shoot crystals, they will change colors, which will provide multiple effects. The orange crystals don't offer magic, but they grant bonus experience above what yellow crystals offer. Blue crystals grant the electric magic, which shoots a large lightning bolt out from your position if you charge the magic and creates a barrier around your character. Red crystals grant the fire magic, which fires a large dragon-shaped flame from your position. Charging the magic temporarily turns your fairies into companions into fiery versions that will fly around the screen, seeking enemies to attack. The blue and red crystals were the only ones that were in the original game.
Correct. Well, and then the orange, technically.
Yeah. But that's the ones that people would normally use for attacking. Yep.
Right.
The green crystals grant the earth magic, which will cause a large number of rocks to fall from the sky, damaging enemies and canceling bullets. Charging the green magic will convert weak enemies and bullets to yellow crystals. Purple crystals grant you bomb magic, which lets you drop a powerful bomb that will destroy enemies and change crystal colors. The bomb has a very large area of effect. When charged, the bomb magic will convert any on-screen crystals to black crystals, which will be auto-collected. These are only for score. Unlike the original game, where crystals drop to the bottom of the screen where you're not shooting at them, Crystals will float up and down slowly towards the back of the screen. You can carry a maximum of 6 magics at any point, with subsequent crystal pickups boosting the power of your held magic when they're used. I believe it goes up to level 7 if memory serves. The secondary fire is a ground bomb that fires out automatically as you shoot your weapon. Some enemies will yield a floating bomb upgrade pickup, which will increase the strength of the bombs, or double bomb upgrade, which will allow you to shoot 2 at the same time. There are some kettles that you can destroy that will grant you a bonus, usually an extra fairy or companion. You can have 6 companions or fairies join you, as provide extra firepower. Some kettles will give you a crystal when destroyed. And basically options when we talk about fairies here.
Yep.
The game plays out over 6 main stages, and 7 stages there is a final boss fight. So, let's talk about the stages for you. Stage 1, the town outskirts. I got this confused with the second stage for a second. The second stage is the first stage in the arcade. Trying to remember what the town outskirts. What was that? That's where you fight that the head that floats down, right? The stage 1.
Yep.
Yeah, but I'm trying to remember, wasn't there a mid boss?
Yeah, the mid boss is Haniwa, which is that sort of spooky looking tree.
So it was with it, yeah. But I thought that was the mid boss in the stage 1 of the first arcade game. I can't remember.
Yep.
Okay. So why don't you go over the stages, because my mind is a mess right now here.
Sure. Yeah. Taking a look at the game stages and how it's all laid out. Stage 1 is the town outskirts, and the mid boss of the stage is Haniwa, which is a sort of spooky looking tree, I guess you could say. And then the boss is known as Hirata, which is this interesting, I'm not sure what you would call it. It's this
looks like
thing with
like an Aztec head or something, right?
Faces on each side. It sort of reminds me of in Gradius 3, you've got those stone column deals in the Moai stage, and it has a Moai on each side, or like the judge in the original Transformers animated movie that has multiple faces on different sides of its head, and it shoots out smaller versions of itself, kind of like some of the Moai.
Yeah, the biggest problem I have with this boss is that when I was playing the game, I play a little bit aggressively, so I was too far forward when I got to the boss, and it would constantly drop on me, and I'd lose a life when it first appeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the Moai thing that you can... I'm certain some people will get the Transformers reference on there, but I think with the Moai and having the multiple faces that spin, it's probably the closest approximation, and it shoots off little versions of itself that you have to keep destroying it, and then eventually after enough damage is done, it shoots off something. Was there like little fireballs or something that you have to avoid before it finally dies?
I don't think so. I think it just shoots out smaller versions of itself. For those of you who are currently yelling at your podcast device, I will correct myself. Haniwa is actually the floating statue head that has rocks that spin around it that it kind of puts out. That's the one that's in the town outskirts. I mistakenly said it was the tree, but it's not. That is in stage 2, which is the forest graveyard. And that is called the Treant, and it is this spooky looking tree that is kind of annoying because it spits these seeds out at you, and if you shoot down the seed, then the seed becomes a little tree that then pops out and comes down. So you kind of have to be careful how you position yourself during that fight, because you can either get hit by the seed and have it turn into the tree and then take a hit and die, or if your fire is spread out enough, or the silk options are up above you and they shoot a seed that's up above you, then it can land right on top of you. So you have to be mindful of that. You can't quite just go up into the upper left corner because you're not necessarily safe there. So you sort of have to watch and compensate as it's spitting the seeds out.
Yeah, where's Kirby when you need him? He knows how to deal with trees.
Exactly. And then at the end of stage 2, you fight Death, which is an interesting fight that has multiple attacks. One of which is annoying but also kind of cool, where you'll get all these blue orbs that will spawn on screen that are spawn points for these sort of blue sword things that will rush you at the back of the screen. And so it's kind of a cool attack, but it can be annoying.
Yeah, you know, I always have found Death to be a hard fight, no matter, you know, if I have my whip or those sickles that he keeps shooting out, they're really hard to avoid. And if you can get the stopwatch, the stopwatch is a good weapon against Death. Especially if you can get the 2 times and you got enough hearts. That works wonders for stopping Death and killing him. Just make sure to get the red orb at the end, right?
Yep. Stage 3 is the island in the sky. Now, unfortunately, the mid-boss is not Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, but it is instead Balrog, which is this sort of flaming dog thing. It walks back and forth, it jumps around, and it spits out these flame deals. Fireball things.
Yeah, it seems to like rushing forward, and then it will back up, and it makes this weird noise right before it jumps, right? To let you know that, hey, it's going to jump and you have to go underneath it.
Yeah. There's some RNG in this fight. Sometimes you can literally sit on the left side of the screen and just move up when it rushes you, and then it'll move back and stuff. Other times it will rush forward, rush back a little bit, and then when it jumps, it'll jump up far enough forward that you can't just stay in the upper left of the screen, and like you said, you'll have to go under it. So another one of those fights that can be either trivial or what the heck. So you gotta be careful. And then the stage 3 boss is Medusa, which is not entirely like the mythological Medusa, but more like a giant snake with armor and a big sword. So think of it like a bit like a large snake version of the shield maiden robot from Gyarus. And that makes me wonder if that shield enemy in Gyarus was actually inspired by the Medusa enemy here.
Yeah, it's not very much like it deals with the fact that it's a Medusa enemy. Right, it could just be it's more like just a snake enemy who happens to shoot bullets out and has a sword and use the tail as a weapon, right? Nothing in that fight actually would tell you that she can turn you to stone.
Right. But there's some cool bits in the fight. The Medusa can let out these sort of electric bat things, and can put out a series of orbs that will electrify, and so you kind of have to be careful where you position yourself And you got to watch out for the sword attack, because the sword will swing and kind of move in an arc down and up. And then stage 4 is inside the temple. The mid-boss is known as Biora, which is this interesting kind of flower thing, I guess you could call it. The flower itself doesn't move too far forward or backward. It does a little bit, but the big threat with this is it'll shoot out this grouping of 4 orbs, and those will split apart and start spinning around. So you kind of have to figure out where the orbs are going to be so you can move forward or backward or whatever to sort of get inside the pattern as it expands out. So it can be a little bit of a hassle.
Yeah, thankfully the pattern is easier than anything Toho has with spinning orbs.
Indeed. And then this is where the reboot version, the arrange, differs from the arcade, because in the arcade you would fight this Sphinx boss, but since the reboot is based on the X68000 version, that is where the first major change comes in, which is that you fight this snake boss called Mola, and it's this snake or serpent that sort of floats around, and it'll move in kind of a semi-random pattern, and then it'll do this thing where it'll shoot out these 8-way bullet spreads, and it will also shoot some aimed bullets. It'll let out these little orbs, and it will also spit out bubbles that will kind of push you around. They won't kill you, but they will sort of move you around and make it harder to maneuver. But it'll also do this thing where the snake will do this funny laugh, and then when it does that, then it does this spinning attack, kind of like a Dreamcast logo, where it starts small and then makes bigger circles as it goes around. And you got to watch for that, because sometimes that will clip you, or it'll do that attack and then rush you. So you got to be careful of that particular attack.
Is that what that's supposed to be? Is that what's supposed to be like the Dreamcast is thinking? I thought it was starting to sound like a dog, but if that's its thinking noise that makes before it rushes. That makes sense.
Well, the laugh is, I don't know, the laugh is kind of funny, but yeah, just the arc in which it moves kind of reminds me of the Dreamcast logo when it, boots up. Stage 5 is the underground waterway, and that has some vertical movement in a couple of spots, which makes it a little bit more challenging. Definitely one of the first areas of the game that I think could be a major wall for people. The mid-boss is the crab, or it's a pair of crabs, one that walks on the floor and one that walks on the ceiling. The crabs will shoot out the same kind of water bubbles that Mola will shoot out, so they sort of push you around and possibly into something else. There will be enemies that will spawn during that time, and then the crabs will also shoot out these 3-way spreads that sort of arc. So you kind of have to stay centered. The big strategy here is, if there are crystals on the screen, stay centered as much as you can, shoot the crystals to then use the refract capability for it to hit both of the crabs to do damage.
Yeah, this was the first mid-boss fight that gave me a little bit of trouble.
Oh, really?
Right. Yeah, for me this was the one, because I think the bubbles that they were shooting made things moving around pretty difficult for me. And I don't know what is with giant enemy crabs. I couldn't find their weak point for massive damage here.
Well, this is one of those fights definitely where having the blue magic to use the barrier is important, because then you can at least be protected when the bubbles push you into a bullet or something. That or the purple magic for the bomb, which I think will dispatch the bubbles. And then
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. And then again, this diverges from the arcade game because the arcade game, the boss is known as Dracula, but like the Medusa, it doesn't really have much in common with the Dracula of legend. It's more like this green zombie face that has sort of tentacles or whatever going to the floor and the ceiling. Almost looks a bit like the like the Gradius 3 or Gradius 4 version of Bacterian. That's in the original arcade game, but in the X68000 version and subsequently the Reboot version, you have the Cyclops boss.
Yep, everybody's favorite dog boss, right?
I hate.
Well, I mean that's what he acts like though. He acts and sounds like a dog.
Kind of. Yeah, and it's weird because in the X68000 version, it's this weird-looking thing that has these furry arms and legs. It almost looks like... Oh, I can't remember the full name, but there was an early Popeye cartoon where he ended up on an island looking for his pappy. And there are these dudes on the island that have these sort of fur arm covers and leg covers, and it reminds me of that. And so, as big as Popeye was in Japan, I wonder if that was in any way an inspiration for the original design of the Cyclops boss in the X68000 version. But in the Reboot arrange, it's more of almost like a rock monster thing. It has these long arms that extend out, and the weak point is, of course, the eye, and it'll bash the ground to send rocks flying up at you. And you can destroy the rocks with your firepower, but it doesn't mean that you will necessarily always get them all destroyed. This boss will also kind of rush you, then fall back, and then jump at you. And so, like the Balrog, you have to sort of watch for that tail so that you can slip underneath of it and let it jump over you, and then that way you can avoid getting hit by it. This boss was my first wall, big time.
Apparently, the character you're thinking of is Alice the Goon.
Oh, okay.
For the Popeye character, which I won't go into Popeye lore. Let's not in this podcast, but yeah, she has a fur on there. I'm sure she's related to the tribesman that you're talking about earlier. But yeah, it's.
Oh yes, the goons. Yep, exactly what I was talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
Stage 6 is the lava cave. This one also has some vertical sections that can get dicey, and just like in Salamander or the Gradius games where you've got some flames coming out in arcs from different spots, you've got that. You can take the environmental damage and get tripped up by those. There are dragons in the stage that then accompany those flame arcs. And so, once again, barrier magic is super helpful here. The mid-boss is a pair of Minotaur, they're called Minotauros, and it's a pair of Minotaurs that will have this weird pattern where they come down and will shoot these lasers out at an angle, and then will semi-aim a series of bullets at you, and then they'll kind of run toward each other, and then one will jump over. In the original version, because of the 4:3 aspect ratio, I think you kind of had to stay centered on screen and sort of dodge their attacks and then anticipate when they're going to jump. But in the Reboot, you can sort of hang back at the bottom left of the screen and kind of take them out fairly easily. So it's a bit of a trivial fight as long as you're in the right position. What is less trivial is the dragon boss fight at the end of stage 6, which is kind of nasty. It does this thing where it will pop its head out and it'll shoot 3 bursts of flame, and then sometimes it'll move its head down, other times it'll wait to move its head down, and so it's a little bit of RNG there, where sometimes you can stay in the center or toward the bottom and you won't have to worry about it. Other times it'll move and shoot the flames, and I found it a little bit hard to sort of predict where you needed to be based on its movement and when the flames were shooting out, because there was not very much time to react. So another one where having the barrier magic was pretty invaluable for this boss fight, because it's very easy to take a lot of hits and to have to tank a bunch of that very, very frequently.
Yeah, I had a hard time. I definitely had a hard time with the dragon boss. And aside from maybe the final boss, that was the hardest boss I had to deal with.
For sure. And then stage 7 is just the final boss fight. It's known as Cave Exit, where you're sort of flying upward as you're coming out of the lava cave, and you are fighting the game's primary antagonist, who is known as Wool. And so you kind of get the theme here of cotton, willow, wool, etc. The running series of puns.
Yeah, this boss, with the fact, if she didn't have the shield, it would make this fight a lot easier. But with it combined with the shield and the boulders and stuff that falls from the sky, it can make this pretty challenging. Yeah.
What I found works best for this fight is, number 1, have some blue magic so that you can have barrier. She does these bullet spreads that you can go between and kind of micro between them, but if she activates a bullet spread when she's really close to you, it can be a little bit difficult to dodge through them in time. The other thing that works great is to have the green magic, the earth magic, so that when she is activating boulders coming at you from the left side of the screen, and sometimes even coming down, you can sort of counteract that with your own set of boulders and nullify a lot of the attacks coming your way, as well as any bullets she might be throwing your way. So really a combination of blue and green magic is pretty helpful here. Bombs can also be helpful, but those two I think are the most helpful. And of course, as you go along and she spawns additional enemies, you can get more crystals that you'll want to try and shoot enough to turn into blue or green, so that you can kind of continue to do that in a loop.
Yeah, there's one other thing that I want to mention that I completely forgot to put in here. It's the fact that Cotton's brew in the back of it can be used as a weapon, similar to like the afterburners and some other STGs. And you'll need that, especially when dealing with some stages where it's moving up and you have to deal with enemies behind.
Right. And that was another quality of life feature that they added with the Reboot version. And something else that I forgot to add to the notes, but I wanted to make sure and mention, is with the magic, when you're using a charge magic version, you can only have one of those active at a time. So let's say you have a barrier magic charged and you get the barrier in place. If you then try to charge another magic and utilize that, it will nullify the barrier. So just something to keep in mind.
As you destroy enemies, you fill a meter in the bottom left-hand corner. Once full, you can activate Fever Mode. In Fever Mode, You deal extra damage with your firepower and crystal refracted shots, guaranteeing you a point multiplier for score up to 1,024 times. Items are worth more points while in fever mode, and your shot also has some bullet canceling ability. Once the meter is drained, you'll need to fill it up to use fever mode again. As you activate fever mode, you leveled up to a max of level 5. If you die, your level drops by 1. So fever mode is basically scoring mode. I think there's a super play that I saw, and that Shmup Junkie recommends as well. I think the guy ended up with like 3 extends on the first stage just from scoring alone.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I noticed too is that sometimes I didn't get it. It like made a special noise if I got to 777 mode or something like that. And other times, the other time I played it did not. Do you know what that was about?
No.
You know when it gives you the stage at the very end, goes like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Okay.
Right before the final boss.
Oh yes.
One time I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and I was like, okay. And then the other time I went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then below it says 7, 7, 7. I have no idea what that meant.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I didn't realize that. I think I got that every time I played and got to the final boss. So I wonder what triggers that.
I don't know either. That's almost I wouldn't be asking you, but I don't know. Yeah, there's something else that the score attack mode did, but the score attack mode is something new for the arranged mode of Reboot.
Right. Yeah, there's basically a 2-minute and 5-minute caravan version that is sort of a remix of stages 1 and 2, kind of squished together in some ways. And it really is a neat mode. Obviously the whole focus is scoring, so it's going to be very busy and very chaotic for 2 minutes or 5 minutes. All right, let's talk about the graphics. I found the graphics in the Reboot version to be very bright and colorful, far more than the original arcade game or the X68000 revision, which in some ways is curious because I understand, even though Cotton is traditionally a cute 'em up, the original arcade game, despite being on Sega 16 hardware, was a little bit drab in terms of the color scheme, more muted colors and not as bright and cheerful as you would think. But this game is just, it pops. I mean, everything looks really nice in that regard.
Yeah, the only thing that I would say that, and this is a minor nitpick, is there's so much to see and all the stuff going on, but the game moves at such a manic pace. If you're not watching a playthrough of somebody else playing, you'll miss most of the stuff.
Sure.
You're so focused on on what's in front of you.
And my notes here, fever mode kind of becomes a bit of a distraction, because when you go into fever mode and you get all of these pop-ups on screen showing you what your multiplier is, it can be incredibly busy and make it so that that's sort of what you focus on. And unfortunately, bullet and enemy visibility did not take precedence. So when you're in fever mode, there will be times where you will miss a bullet or you will miss an enemy, and they might actually run into you if you didn't take them out first, which can be a little bit of a problem. And just in general, it can get so busy visually speaking that it can be hard to sort of parse what's going on. I did think, though, that the updated cinematics were a really nice touch, because if you go back and you watch the PC Engine CD-ROM version, the cinematics are nice, but of course they're basic sort of pixel art representations, and this is an area where I think the reboot really does it right, where they take what was done originally and they don't change it drastically. They literally just redid it in a manner that looks like the original in terms of the overall design, but with new hand-drawn art that mimics the original panels and animation. And so it feels like a loving tribute to the original in that sense. What did you think about the visuals otherwise?
I thought everything was well done. The problem with the speed and missing on stuff that they put in on the side, it was easy to distinguish where things were coming from. It wasn't so much the fact that I couldn't see the enemies or I couldn't see the bullets. It was more like the kamikaze enemies were coming at me really fast and I had to get them out of the way. So the visuals definitely did their job and everything was clearly distinguishable. I like the updates that they did on the enemies, and the cinematics were nice, but after once I just skipped them.
Right.
I think where everything really starts to come into its own is with Cotton's Rock and Roll Fantasy. But we'll talk about that later. So let's talk a little bit about sound here. The arranged version soundtrack features new interpretations of the arcade game songs. There's a long list of musicians who were involved with the Reboot version's music. Kenichi Arakawa, Stage 1. Kenichi Hirata, original composer guitar. Hiroshi Kawada on Stage 2. Tetsuro Sato from Success on Stage 3. Daisuke Matsumoto from Cave on Stage 4. Shinji Hosoi on Super Sweep from Stage 5. Koichi Namaki from Stage 6. Hisayoshi Orguru and Onga Sesakosho, I'm sure, thanks Mark, on Stage 7. Kimitaka Matsume on intro and ending, and Ina Kondo on other music. So for those of you that suffer through that, I appreciate it. The sound effects are generally a nice glow up of the earlier game. Voice work in the game is generally good, though sometimes the voice bits for each magic deployment can be a bit overbearing if used a lot. Yeah, it can be a little grate on your ears if you keep doing charge shot. Well, I no one wants to hear me say charge shot, but I think we all get the idea.
Right. I mean,
overall, the soundtrack is pretty impressive.
I was not overly bothered by the voices, but yeah, I could see how constantly hearing Cotton yell "Badia" when you use the charge blue magic to get the barrier, it would get old after a while. But honestly, I felt like the sound design was a nice strength of the game, and I thought it was pretty cool that they got Shinji Hosoe and Daisuke Matsumoto to contribute to the Reboot arranged soundtrack, which I found myself humming and whistling to on stream, and I enjoyed it. So another one of those situations where I'm always glad that I invest in the the limited or special edition versions, so I can get that CD soundtrack, because I always like to go back and be able to have that in the library.
Well, the other part that got me thinking too is I'm thankful that other games don't follow this formula where they shout the name of the attack every time. Thankful that's limited to stuff like, in some ways, more so to fighting games where they shout the name of the attack. You can imagine Metroid if you're playing through, and every time you do it, it says like spin dash, missile. Oh gosh, that would get old so fast.
Oh yes. Now you just wait. Somebody's going to do a hack of Super Metroid and make it happen.
If so, then they got to use MSU, and they have certainly more time than I do.
Yeah. All right, let's cover the scoring a little bit. Unfortunately, there's not a ton of information out there on scoring. There's not a Shmups Wiki entry for this game yet. And so what I've got here in the scoring is what I was able to glean by playing the game, and then also big shout out to eTrem, because the Bullet Heaven video on Cotton Reboot helped me to fill in the gaps of some stuff that I was not solid on. So we talked about Fever Mode before, and that really is the meat of the scoring. And so the multiplier levels are as follows. And in the initial level 1 multiplier, it is times 64. You reach level 2 very quickly, which will be times 128. And you reach level 3 quickly, and that's times 256. That doubles again for level 4, and then you max out at level 5, which is times 1024. Now the way that works is you get the bonus for taking out enemies by shooting a crystal and having those shots refract, and then the refracted shots being what takes out the enemies. Where it really comes into play is with your mid-bosses and bosses, because that is where just hits to the bosses will give you those multiplier points. So like a lot of games where you get tick points for hitting the bosses, here you want to make sure that you use that to your advantage from a scoring perspective, because then you can kind of milk them for a good deal of score. The black crystals are worth a maximum of 320,000 points. And I wasn't 100% clear on how this works. I think you have to collect a certain number of them to get up to that threshold, which is why using a purple magic when there are a bunch of crystals on screen and doing the charge version to convert them all to black crystals and then auto-collect them is sort of I think the way to boost up your crystal, your black crystal point total. I saw in the Bullet Heaven review that there was at one point where there was 160,000 point black crystal, but I didn't observe myself what the lowest total is. So that's, again, I'm not 100% clear on that. As with the original game, at the end of each stage is the tea time mini game. The white teacups are worth 2,000 points each, which are added up in the Unomi bonus at stage end. And then the red teacups give you an additional 50,000 points, which you can see on screen as you collect them. However, again, like the original, if you avoid all the teacups, then you get a secret bonus, much like the secret bonus in Galaga 88 by not shooting any enemies. And so the secret bonus by avoiding all the tea in stage 1 is 2 million points. And then for each subsequent stage, you add an additional 2 million points to the total when you get through the tea time without collecting any cups. So of course by the end of stage 6, if you can manage to dodge all the really fast falling teacups, you can get a pretty sizable bonus. The end stage bonuses also include what is known as a magic shoot bonus, and that's worth 20,000 points. Again, this is not entirely clear. It's not explained in the manual. I think it has to do with the successful magic deployment, but it doesn't necessarily tie to the number of magic instances you use. So it might have to do with the number of the number of the different types of magic that you use in each stage. So if you manage to use different types of magic in each stage, that's what contributes to it. But it's not really 100% clear. So I would be happy for someone to follow up with us and let us know exactly what that is if you know specifically. Because like I said, it's not in the manual, and it wasn't abundantly clear while I was playing the game.
Yeah, one of the other things that should be mentioned with in regards to the teacups and the point bonus is in the first couple stages, it's not too bad to do it, but after that, they really start speeding up the rate at which they drop.
Yeah, they get really fast. And then finally, there's a no-miss bonus as well of 1 million points. So you can continue to add to your score by not dying.
It's always a good thing. How do you beat games? Get good. Works for me.
Indeed. Pro tips.
Pro tips, indeed. How do we get good in Gradius and then beat the game? Don't die.
Precisely.
So let's move on to impressions of the game. First off is Horse Takai 45. Heck yeah! I'm going to do some practice runs though, because I have never played a Cotton game, to be honest. Closest I ever played a Cotton game technically was Magical Chase. Note to self, use the D-pad when playing this game. Analog stick has weird movements. And I have to agree with him here. This is one of the spots that made me really sort of think, yeah, I need to invest in an arcade stick, because it felt like things were a little bit too sensitive and maybe a little too jerky with the analog stick. First thoughts, there is a lot to learn with the shmup. Most of the whole crystal fusion thing. I had to turn voices off in the range mode because they were giving me some serious sensory overload and how much they overlapped. I really wish the sport had joystick sensitivity options, because this game really feels slippery trying to play on an analog stick. I'd use a D-pad for better movement, and I am not used to that. Also, I forgot to set to easy. No wonder everything felt so chaotic. Yeah, that's kind of the best way I can describe this game. Very chaotic. Yeah, I think it actually accentuates this as well with the D-pad. I played on the PS4 to start with, and I ended up playing on the Switch version later on the Switch Lite, which has the cross D-pad, and had a lot of easier time playing on the Switch Lite. The other thing with it... Oh?
Yep.
Oh. I thought you were going to slip a "oh my" or something there. Alright. Yeah, the other thing is it is very chaotic in the enemy, and I'll leave this discussion for later, but I agree that the game is pretty chaotic and throws a lot at you. It's pretty fast-paced. Final thoughts? I played it and liked it once or twice this month and kind of felt that was enough, to be honest. I don't think this kind of shmup is for me. I feel like the crystal refract system, I think the bombs are pretty dang cool, but the main gripe I had with it was playing with the analog stick. It felt extremely sluggish and slippery at the same time. I had to play with the D-pad on a PS4 controller. It just feels really weird. Also, I had to turn the voices off because they were overlapping a lot and it was giving me a headache. I'm all for shmups and voice acting and all that, but keep it at Dodonpachi level or something, where you hear the voice after a certain amount of damage has been taken, as opposed to all the freaking time. The final boss is guilty of this. I give this game 4 willows out of 10. I mostly just played with Armored Core 6 this month. I get everyone's playing Armored Core 6 on here, and Armored Core 6 is a good game. I'm not sure if anyone's seen this, but it has really, like, anything that could be like Armored Core coasters or an Armored Core toaster, and everyone's going nuts for it now. The price on those games has risen dramatically recently, thanks to this new one. But yeah, I mean, those are all valid points, and I gotta agree with him on the PS4 version in particular is having some problem with the analog stick. I found the Switch version easier to deal with on the analog stick, but still playing on the cross D-pad on a Switch Lite seemed to work perfect for me.
Yeah.
As far as it being manic and stuff, I could definitely see that, and having the voices overlap. those are valid complaints. And again, I appreciate you trying it out. If it doesn't click for you, then wait till we try Cotton Fantasy. I think Cotton Fantasy addresses quite a bit of these points. And it is historically, this is really what worth doing. I think Cotton Fantasy is sort of where it comes into its own.
Sure.
It's sort of like the difference between playing Mushi versus Futari, right? When people tell you to play Mushi, and you're going to have a good time, and Mushi has some issues with it, but Futari is where it sort of really takes off, and everyone's like, yeah, this is a heck of a lot of fun. I think that type of comparison is apt between the original Cotton Reboot and Cotton Fantasy.
Sure. Supergoat said, I'll try normal difficulty this time. I was trying to power through on the second highest. I was making progress. I found the revenge bullets in the highest mode to be too much. And this is all on X68K mode. I haven't touched the remake much at all. And then final thoughts. I've fallen deep into working on my own shmup and didn't play Cotton, or much else, very much. I'll definitely return to it, though. I like the magic system and think that a lot more games could benefit from generously supplied one-use items, such as roguelikes.
Drake Tunston says, I'll only play the X68K version because it works in Mister. I could try it out if you want. Lots of crazy action on screen, lots of things going on, easy to get lost in all, but somehow you get used to it and have a lot of fun. Good soundtrack, funny, cute Japanese characters, and shark guys that look like Gurion. One of the bosses is Snack Girl. Oh, and T. Yeah, I think that it's definitely. Cotton is like one of those things like Legend of the Mystical Ninja, where even if it's your first time playing it, you go, yeah, this is very Japanese.
Yeah.
And I think it definitely shows very early on here. So it's going to appeal to a certain crowd, especially when you're playing the original X68K. I mean, those had to be otaku of otaku people, right, in order to spend all this money on a machine in order to play arcade games the way that they did for those, because those certainly weren't cheap when they were new. So,
right,
yeah, I can understand if it's more of a tepid response to this game for this month.
Sure. Tetraphobia said, late to the party, but I'm in. My copy is arriving tomorrow. Anyone have any tips or able to recommend a guide to read up a bit? I don't suppose anyone's managed to figure out what the alternate version of the green magic does. I get the others, but that one is beyond me. We did have discussion on that in the Discord. And later on, I'm sitting at 590 mil as my best overall and 429 mil as my best one credit attempt. I'm just credit feeding my way through at the moment. Boss of Chapter 5 seems to be about my limit. Not because he's particularly hard, just silly deaths sprinkled through the first missions when my concentration drops. Need to make yourself a bit of wiggle room in case of bad luck, right? And then later, 1cc. First try today. Had a great sleep last night and a walk in the sunshine this morning, so was properly in the zone this afternoon. And responding to me specifically, Tetraphobia said, your tip about the barrier magic was instrumental to the run, so all praise goes to you, my man. Big thanks. Well, you're welcome. Okay, did have a go with the time attack mode. It's a fun mode and very addictive. Leaving this here for now. That's me in 1:15, according to the screenshot, and we'll have a few more goes in the build-up to Halloween, I think. Later on, I lucked out on my run by having loads of blues to take me into the final boss. With the level 6 boss, he is a pain, but he does telegraph his shots by moving his head up or down before he fires, if that helps. What I did find, though, is that all bosses have a random troll AI path that they follow occasionally to mess with you. And then final thoughts. First, big thanks to everyone for being so welcoming. It's been my first community playthrough, and it's been great. Second, it is also my first Cotton, and it's been exactly what I was hoping for. I think it does the Keep-em-up witching vibe better than something like Death Smiles, for example, and the spells add some real technical depth. The crystals are also a lot of fun, and I'm a big fan of the big numbers on screen too, as well as the ludicrous scores in the hundreds of millions. It was a perfect game for me for this month, and a 1cc for someone of my skill level is always very welcome. Well, I'm sure glad you played along, Tetraphobia, and your discussion in the Discord was great, and I'm glad to see someone as enthusiastic about this game as you seem to be, because that's really what it's about, is getting people in, playing the games, getting interested in them, and then really engaging.
Yeah, I definitely 100% or 1,000% agree. You're getting somebody that just finds a game that has clicked with them, or find that passion to play SDGs. I don't care if you're playing Galaga, or if you're playing Cotton and Reboot, or if you're playing Deep Space Waifus. You just enjoy the games that you're playing and have fun. As long as you do that, you are always welcome, and always glad to see that enthusiasm. I hate to admit it, I had trouble even mustering that enthusiasm for playing this game sometimes this past month. So good job for you, sir, and congrats and GG on your 1cc.
And just know that if you're playing Deep Space Waifu, I'll be silently judging you.
You silently judge me all the time. I'm still here. There's your Stadler and Waldorf for the month. Alright, shall we keep going?
Yeah.
One more quarter says, Cotton and Silk clears, flying on a broom and collecting candy. I don't think it gets any more Halloween than that. A blast to play. Excellent visuals, literal eye candy, great controls, magic was always abundant, juggling the gameplay mechanics and magic use keeps gameplay interesting throughout. The extra modes and characters are lots of replayability. Rated good times. Yeah, there's another one that clicks. I'll get on my feelings on here, but I am glad to see another person who really, really enjoyed this. I am always happy to see that people report, like, yeah, I hadn't tried this before, I hadn't heard of this, but this game is now one of my favorites.
Corkman77 said, does going into hyper mode and shooting get all the multipliers, shooting and getting all the multipliers cancel some bullets? Indeed it does. Later on, Corkman says, so close again. At least I'm getting to the stage 6 boss, or last boss, consistently. Just got to learn those last two bosses a little better. I've been kind of just powering through with bombs and barriers. And then later on, I got all the Willows, 1cc with my best score to date. And then some detailed final thoughts from Corkman. I had a ton of fun playing this one again. I picked this up a couple years ago. I guess it was a few months after its launch. I remember watching a Bullet Heaven review, and it convinced me to pick it up. At the time, it was a blast just learning it and playing the caravan modes. I think I was playing the Shoot the Corecast game of the month at the same time, so more effort was put into doing well in that month's game, Project Starship X. So I was happy to come back to this game, and a little bit more seriously this time. I spent more time playing the main arrange mode this time around and learning the levels and bosses. I was happy to be able to get a couple 1cc's with Cotton and Needle. On my clear with Needle, I had a really good run with my best score to date. I was also able to get a higher score than my previous runs on the 2-minute caravan mode. Overall, I can't say I completely mastered this game, but I'm at a point where I have a good handle on all the mechanics and have pretty decent routing going on. All that is left would be the optimization in a few areas. I really enjoyed this game 2 years ago and playing this month. I think it's been elevated to the short list of my favorite shmups. I love the music and graphics. The mixture of pixel art, spooky backgrounds, and big juicy, shiny multipliers is a good mix for me. The characters added some charm for sure as well. The magic system is fun to mess around and strategize with. The scoring system is a ton of fun and pretty unique. Learning when to use the fever mode for optimal score or when to leave the gems on screen to build that fever meter leaves a lot of room for optimization, and there's always more to be had. I had so much fun that I picked it up on PS4 as a collector's edition that was still available at Strictly Limited. I'll definitely be playing this again from time to time when I want to relax and play a game that I know well. And again, I love this because hearing people be so enthused about a game that we've covered is very gratifying, because obviously it means that people are engaged and that we're helping to scratch that shmup itch.
Yeah, I'm always just happy that people stuck around even after we played 1942.
Ah, yes. Let's quickly cover the scores here. On the normal arrange mode, we had Corkman on top with 727,752,470 points. Tetraphobia came in second with 702,356,410 points. I ended up in third with my best score of 663,434,210 points. And I don't think that was actually one of my clears. I think that was just when I was concentrating strictly on score. One More Quarter had 479,880,660 points. And then Horse Techie 45 with 19,524,559 points. On the Caravan 2-minute mode, Corkman was on top again with 150,442,960 points, and then Tetraphobia with 138,146,400 points. I took a photo of, or a screenshot of the Caravan mode, I thought, but I must have forgotten to post it. So I don't remember where I ended up. So, final thoughts. This is a game that I kind of anticipated that I was going to enjoy, but I don't think I anticipated how much I would enjoy it. And I was also surprised at how approachable it ended up being. When I first started playing, I thought, ooh, this could be rough because of all the stuff going on and how crazy everything gets in fever mode and sort of how you can lose some level of visual clarity with all the multiplier stuff flying around. But I feel like even though that is an area where I think they could have patched the game to improve it by making bullets have top priority on the screen, even in fever mode, I feel like you kind of can still compensate for that, and like it's still pretty playable despite that minor quibble. And I really enjoyed engaging with the magic system, the scoring system, and I was more focused on clearing the game before the end of the month, and I actually managed to clear it with all 4 characters. So I cleared it with Cotton, then I went through and I did a bunch of play with Silk and had a hard time clearing. So then I switched gears and I cleared with Appley right away, and then with Needle right away, and then I went back and cleared with Silk right away. So I actually got 3 of the 4 clears in one stream, which is wild. But yeah, I really enjoyed this game. I definitely want to go back and do some more with the caravan modes to see what kind of score potential I have there. And then also, now that I know the games well, maybe go back with Appley or Needle and try a little bit harder to really push for score to see what I can get. Because Corkman's score of 727 million plus isn't even, like top 50. Some people are pushing the score to ridiculous levels. So I don't know that I want to try and reach for the stars in that sense, but I do want to see if there's more that I can eke out of it, and more that I can do to really maximize that mode, or that fever mode capability. So all in all, I rather enjoyed this game, and I'm glad that we finally got it slotted into the schedule. What about you?
Me, I'm a little bit mixed on this. I definitely am glad that we slotted this in the schedule, and I really do like the game. But it's sort of a case, as I mentioned earlier, where I'm looking at Mushi versus Futari. I really like Cotton Fantasy more. And it's sort of weird that I ended up playing Fantasy before I played a lot of Reboot, but here we are. So I do like Reboot. I think that the frantic pace can be maybe a little bit too much for some people. In some cases where it's really busy as you're flying upwards and left. I think that was mainly with a couple of things with the volcano and the temple stages can be a little bit hard when it comes to that. I mean,
Yep.
but that is, again, learning routing and learning enemy placement. There's got to be some memorization in the game. I think it's a heck of a lot better than playing the original Cotton. When I played the original Cotton, it was extremely difficult, and rightly so, because it was an arcade game, right? I mean, it's meant to suck your money. But the Reboot improves on almost every factor. I still think that some of the earlier problems that were brought up stand. The Switch version seems to be a little bit easier to work with when you're playing on an analog stick, or even, as I mentioned, playing on the D-pad on the Switch Lite. The PS4 version, I don't know what it is, but it seems to, especially with the analog stick, maybe it's because mine are very heavily used. I've got one of the launch PS4s with a heavily used DualShock 4, but it felt like the dead zone wasn't quite there on the analog stick, and that caused a problem. So I would rather play the Switch version in this case. That being said, the music was great. The visuals were pretty easy to read. I had a little bit of problem with the. I think I told you this. It was the only shmup where I had to worry about the enemies more than the bullets.
Yep.
It's because the enemies are kamikaze. The enemies will get you more often than what they shoot out. The scoring system, well, it could be a little bit hard to wrap your head around. At least with the bullet time. Not bullet time. The oh shoot. The Dangan fever on time. My mind is going here. It's late. Fever mode, thank you. The fever mode certainly helps when you start getting used to that and how the magic works and what you need to do what. There's enough depth in here to make the game replayable and enjoying what you have. And the another part that I have to say is the translation was very well done. There wasn't any of this move zig or even any bit of Ergish. And from what I remember correctly, Adi from Digital Foundry had a side job where he did a lot of the translation for this. So thanks to him for making it clear and understandable story, as much as Cotton's story could be clear and understandable. Right. The music, the gameplay, everything is done in a very well packaged. The fact that I have small nitpicks, such as the voices or the dead zone in a particular version of it, or maybe things being a little bit too frantic so you can't see all the special attention detail that they put in the game, it definitely speaks volumes. I wouldn't say that this is a top tier STG, but it's definitely a very, very good one. And the only thing that would beat it, in my opinion, is Cotton itself with Cotton Rock and Roll or Cotton Fantasy.
Yeah. One suggestion I'll make is if you're not going to go full arcade stick yet, invest in a Hori fight pad on PS4. That will make a big difference because it has a pretty good D-pad and it's very easy to use.
Yeah, the hard part is not finding a Hori fight pad. The hard part is convincing my wife. She doesn't accept the fact of, but I need it for the podcast anymore.
Sure.
So I actually have my eye on Monoprice has a nice stick that's in between on there. I forget the name of it, but they use all Sanwa parts, and it has gotten pretty good ratings. And for most from Monoprice, you can trust in the quality of the build. So something like that is what I'm looking forward to, because I can switch between that for the Mister and for playing STGs. I'm not going to go full shmup mode or do anything crazy like you have, at least not yet.
Huh. Fair play. All right. Well, what do we have coming up next?
Well, coming up next, we have Thanksgiving, followed by Christmas, I think. So, no, what we have coming up next is we are currently playing Danmaku Unlimited 3, or as I've started calling it after starting on hard mode and continuing to play it, Danmasochist Unlimited 3. Is even playing on easy, that game can get difficult at some points if you're as we said earlier between ourselves, we really have to talk to Mark MSX. I think this is the only time where I wonder what the heck he was thinking with this game, because it's it definitely has hits in the gameplay department, but this game is hitting in Gradius 3, especially when you go on hard mode.
Yeah,
it's like it's going up to Gradius 3 and going, hold my beer.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to pick Mark's brain about this one, because I really want to understand his approach and how he took to this game and what it was that hooked him.
Watch, he'll say something like, I just like the synthwave. Or maybe you need a Korean stick in order to fully understand this game.
That could be.
Alright, so in December we have a DOS shooter, Smorgasbord. We are playing Major Striker, Overkill, Kilo Blaster, and Tubular Worlds, which I think D. Tungsten should be happy, as I believe all these work in Mister. And aren't all these abandonware at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I think technically you can still buy Major Striker on GOG, and or Steam, but I mean, it's, a couple of bucks. It's not much. And yeah, the rest of them are pretty much abandonware at this point. So I'll be posting on the Discord with some links to utilities that will help run them.
Jeez, all I can think of now is toss a coin to your striker, O Valley of Plenty.
Yeah, this will be fun. I remember playing all of these games as a kid at one point because of the shareware nature of them. And so, this will be an interesting one to kind of go back to some of these games.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. In case anyone's wondering why we didn't put Raptor Call the Shadows on there, that's because we are waiting for that to come out with a sequel. We like to do a little bit more with that. And the same holds true for Tyrion, right? We want to give them their proper due. And if it comes down to Raptor Call of the Shadows, it may involve a special lazy guest if we can get him on.
There you go.
Also, I'd like to thank everyone who had played the game with us this month and everyone who sticks around to enjoy and try out the various shmup of the months. I'd like to thank Trem for the logo. I'd like to thank Guru for the lovely podcast shirts and shirt designs, especially the Boss Pro shmups, which is now back in stock. I'd like to thank Kagu.
It's not, actually.
No? They took it down again?
The Redbubble took it down again and basically told me I couldn't resubmit it. So I'm thinking about asking A. Creighton if we can retool the design a little bit to maybe make it less obvious and see if that'll fly. So we'll see. To be determined.
All right. Well, we'll still like to thank Kogasu for the intro and outro music, everyone from the Playcast, or the Concert Cast, and the Collector's Cast, and like to thank MetalFRO for keeping things always interesting with his parrot dogs.
Indeed. I would like to shout out One More Quarter. Not only has One More Quarter joined us for our Cotton Reboot playthrough, but he is actively playing and streaming Danmaku Unlimited 3, so make sure to check him out on Twitch as well. But One More Quarter has also been repping the podcast and the Discord and bringing in some new members. So thank you, One More Quarter, for, championing the podcast and helping to expand our reach and our audience and bring more people into the community to interact and hopefully join in. It means a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much. Well, I guess I might as well throw in the ever-present DJ Psycho M1 and his Pandemicade that he streams every Tuesday. What is it, about 7 Central? Is it about
7
right?
7 Central, yep.
Yep, and especially the Master Chunks, who we constantly feed bits to. So, he is always the best entertainment for that stream.
Yep, good stuff. All right, anything else that we need to say or discuss before we close up?
Yeah, I'll just put out there for everybody who is listening at this point, get your misters ready because we're going to start January 2024 with a Alesta GG collection here, 1, 2, and 3. So that's Alesta for the Game Gear. We're going to try something new. And the new Focus Shot or Focus Shmup will be Espeleta 2, and I'm looking forward to that. Everyone should have gotten their cave copies or sent to them by Limited Run Games now, and it's available on the eShop at a pretty decent price. So it should be pretty easy to join in. I really wanted to slot in Sofstar, but I don't think we're quite ready for that just yet. So that will most likely be a 2025 thing.
Alrighty. Well, with that said, thank you all for listening, and we will catch you next month.
Thank you.